question will be from Arcelia Lopez.
Hello, my name is Araceli Lopez, and I have been studying Inspired Public Schools. My question is directed to Mr. James Wilcox and Ms. Barbara Mitchell. According to the article, California school funding does not equal, Thomas Timmer states, quote, "A court ruling in 1976 was supposed to make school district finances roughly equal throughout the state. However, almost 30 years later, funding is still unequal. What do you think are ways to make the system fair for all students in California? And how can we solve this problem to prevent dropouts in lower income communities?"
I think my response to most of what's been talked about really goes back to resources, to your question. The bottom line for us at Aspire, I think, and for most people who look at the challenges we face with high school dropout rates across the country, is a resource question. If you think about it as a race, to me, my kids are starting the race 50 yards in front. And they're starting the race 50 yards in front because they have everything that I could possibly give them. And there are many, many, many families across the country, and many of them are served by this school and many schools that Aspire has across the state, and don't have the resources to give their kids what they want to give them. And so what that goes back to your question about fair funding and funding that's equitable across schools, there's a lot of things that are broken in that system. If you look at the amount of money that is spent in a school that serves predominantly middle income or upper income families, and you compare that amount of funding within just about any district in the country to the amount of funding that's being spent on families that are from low income neighborhoods and don't have the resources at home, what you'll see is that the kids who have the fewest resources get the fewest resources. And that's the system that we have. Unfortunately, that's the case in just about every place. There's been a few places that have tried to break that cycle and tried to come up with a new way to make sure that the funding that the state and the federal governments provide follow the students, regardless of what school they go to. Oakland Unified tried a system that was very similar to that. Charter schools are actually a system that are like that. This school is a charter school. And what that means is when you show up here as a student, the funding that the state and federal government is giving for your education follows you here. And if you leave this school, it goes with you somewhere else. And the amount of funding that is generated by every student, meaning the funding that the state and the federal government gives to provide for your education, is the same whether you are being educated here at East Palo Alto Phoenix Academy, or whether you're being educated at Cal Prep, another Aspire school, or whether you're being educated at Benjamin Holt in Stockton. It's the same amount of funding, but it's a different kind of funding system. We don't have that in all places, but at least in charter schools, it is a place where the funding across charter schools is the same, whether you're coming from a heavily wealthy, a really wealthy family, or whether you're coming from a low-income family. In fact, what happens is that the federal government, state government steps up and gives an additional amount of funding that follows you. So I think when we think about funding changes that need to happen, that can make the system fairer than it is today, we need to think about a pretty basic formula that makes sure that whatever the government is doing to help make sure that you have the resources to succeed and to give all the supports that you need to succeed in school and later succeed in college, that they follow you no matter where you go. Your second, I don't remember what the second piece of your question. I think I addressed both of them at once. What can we do about the dropouts? For us, at Aspire Public Schools, and I think for a lot of people, when we think about what can be done, I personally believe that it's really about having a very, very small place and a very personalized education, that where every student is known and you know every adult in your building. And the way that we have built high schools in the U.S. for a long time was a way that we put a lot of kids in one place and a lot of adults in one place, so that with the good intentions. The intentions were so we could provide more classes, we could provide extracurricular activities, we could have the resources to do things for smaller groups. But the trade-off comes is that you are a single student in a very, very big place, and you know a handful of other students, and you know a handful of other adults. And I would bet that you can name everybody in this school that goes to your school. And I would bet there's very, very few of the schools that you could point to in this area where the students would say the same thing. And I would bet that every adult in this building knows your name. And I bet you don't like that sometimes, but I mean, I know that you know it's true. And what that means is that when you need help and you need something special and you need some assistance along the way, a lot of people know about it. And that's the difference between having a very small high school and a very big high school. Very big high school, you have some more choices. You know, in our schools at Aspire, you can take any language you want as long as it's Spanish. You go to a big, big high school, you can take lots of different languages. And what that means, though, is you have a lot more bodies in one place and you're a lot less known. So I think about it as a safety net, a small, personalized place where every student is known, every adult knows every student knows every adult, results in a personalized approach where you get the resources you need and the help you need.
Let me start with the second one first, and the role that funding equity could potentially play in reducing dropout rates. Interestingly, I think in our district, our belief system is that the greatest leverage we have in reducing dropout rates has to do with ensuring students, and this starts at elementary level really, but in particular at middle school levels, are getting the proper guidance and course placement for the college readiness courses that provide for strong admissions to the California state school system and the University of California system. We have approximately over 40% of our Latino and Black students are not finishing high school with the A through G requirements, graduation requirements. So that's really a challenge that has to do with guidance and course placement, even more than funding, and I think it's a huge leverage for us. I wish I had the answer to the school funding. I'm certainly not an expert either nationally or statewide on school funding, other than knowing that it is a Gordian knot of sources for local schools, from the federal government down to the state government to local property taxes and then donations. So I do know that since I graduated from high school in 1970, California schools have dropped significantly in comparison to the rest of the United States in terms of the funding per pupil that we provide our K-12 public school students. So part of this is an issue at the California level of priorities, funding priorities at the state level. It's a particularly critical time, as you all know, with the funding conditions that we're under now and the state cuts in funding for schools. So I worry that it will exacerbate the gaps that exist, and particularly will carve away at programs that do offer the electives and support services that our students need. But I don't have any magic answers.
You might have noticed that me and Mr. Padilla were kind of talking here, and just wanted to make sure that people understood that Palo Alto School District is a basic aid district. So their per pupil spending is based on the tax base, the property tax base that is what's the word I'm looking for? The money that comes in from the property tax. That's where the pure pupil spending comes from for the Palo Alto School District. Not so here. Not so in many school districts around the nation. A basic aid district will have far more per pupil spending dollars than a non-basic